Hi everybody. So in this particular video, I want to show you guys how to create a mini dashboard. And a dashboard is just going to be kind of a display of different kinds of information graphically. And we're specifically going to create a progress type chart based on using the donut type of graph. So what we're going to end up with, and I'll show you the done version here, we're going to end up with what you see here. So we're going to take all of our sales that we have here. So each of these rows is a different transaction made to a particular customer. And we were either selling, annuals or biannuals or perennial type plants. And over here, what we did was we created a pivot table that kind of summarized all the data. So it shows in essence that 42% of our sales revenue, okay, so the revenue that we're generating, 42% of that came from sales of annual type plants, the ones that you buy, you plant, and they're dead by the end of the year, all right? 32%, these are the plants that come back every couple years, and then you've also have the perennials, which are the ones that come back year after year, all right? So 32% of our revenue generated came from here, and 26 from here, based on atoms. Now, if I can go back in here, I can kind of change this to all, and you'll see something like that. So if I didn't have it broken down by anybody, this would be out of all of our transactions, 38%, 38%, this happens to be, and 24%. So I can obviously see those percentages here, but to kind of make them stand out more, what we do is we create this little donut chart. And this is a kind of a hybrid here. We have to kind of do a little bit to make that happen, but what it shows is in the darker green is the 38%. Each of these segments technically is about 5%. So you can actually see how this one kind of cut off a little bit here. But any event, so if you look at it, you'd have like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, blah, blah. Okay, and so forth. So same thing here, same thing here. So the lighter area would be, outside of that range. But anyway, so just kind of a special effect there. But nonetheless, we get these percentages, and we get this type of graph based off of this here. So usually when you're putting together something like this, it's usually something where you're taking a hoard of data and you're somehow then summarizing it using, in this case, the pivot table to then create what you see over here. All right, so that's what we're going to be putting together in this video. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my first tab here, which has the actual data in it. See, what I've done here is I've got like a done version, so people can attain this and they know what they're going to be coming up with at the end. So anyway, so I'm going to go back to here, same data, all right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to create the pivot table. So we want to create this thing off to the side of the data. So we're going to first of all start over here, click anywhere in the data, click on the insert, go over here to pivot table, all right? Now, usually when I do pivot tables, I like to put them on their own sheet of paper or their own sheet here. But in this case, since the pivot is going to be so small, I'm just going to keep it on the same sheet as our data, and that way then next to it I can have the graph as you saw. So we're not going to go with the new worksheet. We're going to tell it that we want to go on an existing worksheet, this one, for instance. So I click down to here, click over here, let's say, like that, and I go ahead and hit OK. And that happens. Now what I'm going to do is just kind of scroll over a little bit. There we go. So there is where the pivot table is going to go. Here is what we have for all the fields of data that we have over here on the side, left side there. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to create a pivot that is first of all broken down by the life cycle, like I said, and then we're going to break it down by the color just for some added effect. Anyway, so what we'll do is we'll take the life cycle here field, drag it into the rows area, and there we go on that one. All right, and then we're going to go ahead and find the color, which will be this one right here, the color field, drag that underneath that one there, And there we go. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is bring over the sales data. That's going to be what we see here, and summarize that. So we take that and we drag that field over into values, and there we go on that. Now, let me just show you what we had before. So we're in essence going to have the percentage rather than the actual value. So in this situation, what we'll do is we'll go over here, back to here, and take these numbers and convert it into percentage. So instead of it adding up the numbers for annual, adding up the numbers for biannual, and so forth, we're going to tell it to find what percentage these numbers would be of the total. So in other words, when we look at annual and we see this number here, what percentage is that to our total down here? So what we'll do, very easy thing, is we're just going to do a right click on any one of the numbers here, just like that. Go down to where it says show values as, and just tell it that we want to see the percentage of the column total. That's it. Now we don't need all that extra decimal place action in there, so we can just do a right click on that, go over here and do the number formatting, and just tell it no decimal places for the percentage. Just hit OK, and there we go. And then the other thing that you might want to do is select these, just like that, and line it up on the right hand side. Now it's already lined up on the right hand side, but if you choose that just to make sure it's lined up on the right hand side, you can then use the indent here that usually will push it to the right, but since it can't go any more further to the right, you click it and now it bounces back and comes back like that. That's pretty cool. The other little thing we might want to do is maybe click over here, type in sales, just to make it a little bit simpler looking label, enter that in. That looks good. Now we're going to want to do some filtering on this data. If you look back on what we had before here, we can actually focus in on seeing all the data, or focus in, let's say, on a particular rep, let's say, you know, in this case, Adams, and we can see stuff like that change. So now this is what Adams produced in annual, biannual, and perennial over the year, percentage-wise. All right, so let me just go back here, and we'll click, back on that one there, bring it back. All right, so I'll just go over here and go back to our original here. So the way you get those filters in is we just go ahead and we take, let's say the rep, which was the first one we saw, just drag that down into filters. There we've got that. And we'll also do the country. So we'll take the country and drag that underneath rep. And now we got the two up there, all right? And that's all we have to do with that. I'm going to go ahead and change the coloring of this. So I'm just going to click anywhere on here. Doesn't matter where you're at. Go back up here into the design tab, right? And then I can go into my little drop down here and kind of hover over something I find to be good here. So maybe like this one right here. So I'll click it like that, and then I get the little bit darker coloring. Now there's one more calculation I need to have over here, and let me explain what it is. If I go back, let me just pull this over a little bit here. All right. If I go back to the done version here, you can see that I have, in essence, like a darker version and the lighter version. Now what I'm doing is I'm actually creating two donut charts on top of one another. So this one actually represents each of these numbers, like this number here, or this number here, or that number there, you know, for each of these, right? But we have this in the background as well. Now, in order to get that effect of it, like, you know, revving up to 42 or revving up to 32%, and then showing where it isn't at, so this is just 32, 42, 26. In order to get this effect, what we in essence have to do is create what they kind of call a helper column, all right? And that helper column will be kind of like the inverse of what this number is. So 42%, the inverse of that, if you took 42 from 100%, that gives you 58%. So in essence, that 58% is what you see in this lighter area here, okay? Now, how do we make this all happen? Well, what we need to do is create this column. So let me go back to our original, all right? And what we do is we just go over to here, all right? And I type in equal, all right? So I'm actually creating a calculation outside of the pivot, which is possible to do. So I hit equal, all right? Click on to, or actually type in the number 1, all right? Minus, okay, and then this number here, all right? That cell. Now enter that in, I get 62%, and I can go ahead and copy that down. Now let me just tell you one little thing about this, and this is pretty important. While you're in the pivot table itself, if I go up here into the pivot table analyze, or it might just be the analyze on your version, but you click onto that, and over here in the pivot table group, you'll see options. And when you click onto that area, or when you're in that options area, you'll see where it's got options, and then it has on here generate pivot data. Now, normally that has a check mark on it, all right? So if it has a check mark next to it, and you go and try to do this, the calculation is going to come out right. So what you want to do beforehand, and I just haven't had this already turned off, what you want to do is come into this area before you do this calculation and make sure that this is D-checked. In other words, it doesn't have a check mark on it. So normally it'll pretty much look like that, where it has the check mark. So what you do is just kind of point to it, click it, that will then take off that check mark. And that's all you have to do. And that way, when you go ahead now and do the calculation, it will come out proper. If you don't, you're going to get the same percentage all the way down here. It's kind of a weird thing. And it's just a quirk with the program. It's just nothing you can do about it. Okay, so now to kind of make this look kind of nice over here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this area right here, right? Go to my Home tab, go to my Format Painter here, click onto that, and then I just go and I click right over here, and that formats it the way this one's set up for the most part. And I can also just go back up here and hit that center button a couple times, and that'll get all centered up for me. So that looks nice. All right, so now we're ready to rock and roll. So let me just show you what we have at the end here. So we've done all this, and now we're ready to do this. All right, so that's what we're going to do next here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create 3 little donuts, and they're going to be basically the green, and we're going to do a blue one and kind of an orange rust one here as well. So that's what we're going to end up first of all doing. So we got to create that first. So what do? Well, first of all, what we'll do is we'll go back into Insert, all right, and we're going to click on to, in this pie area, you'll see Donut, and we'll click on the Donut. Now, you'll notice that we didn't ahead of time select the data. We actually created, or we're going to create the graph without the data initially, okay? So it might be a little odd when you first see that. So now that I've done that, then what we do is we'll be in the Chart Design tab already by having created that. If you're not, click it, all right? And then you'll see over here, Select Data. So what we're going to do is click onto that, all right? And when we do that, then we'll have this little thing will pop up here. And then what we'll do is we'll click on to Add, all right? And we don't have to do anything for the series name. What we'll do is we'll go down to here, backspace all that out. Just do that all out of there. Get it all out. And what we need to do is, because we're going to have, in essence, about 20 sections, you know, when we're looking at the graph. If you remember the 3 graphs, they had those little sections in there. They're all equal to about 5% each. So we're going to make 20 of them, right? So that's 20 times 5%, 100%. So in here, and this is kind of weird, but here's what you got to do. We're going to type in the number 1, just like that, comma, and we're going to hit the number 1 again, comma. We're going to do this for a total of 20. So the way I do it, because you kind of drive yourself nuts doing this, you type in 1, I did the comma, right? Now I do, there's 2, comma, 3, comma, 4, comma, 5, comma, 6, comma, 7, comma, 8, comma, 9, comma, 10, comma, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and that's it. So I hit OK. There we go on that one. And then just hit OK again. And then we don't need the title and we don't need this down here. So we're going to go to the element here, take off the title, take off the legend. All right, and that leaves us with this. And then we're going to kind of resize this down to a smaller size here. Now, what I'm going to do is kind of bring it down, maybe about like that, and kind of get a sense of where I'm going to be putting it here. So maybe something like that there, all right? Okay, now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to point to this area right outside of here, double click it. That'll open up this little panel. I go over to fill, and I say that I don't want any fill. So that gets rid of that little like canvas background there. And for the border, I don't want any line kind of going around it like this. So what I end up with, if I kind of click away from it, is that. See? Pretty cool. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is double click onto any one of those little sections there. And when I do that, this kind of changes and it gives me the donut hole size. And what I'm going to do is bring that down to maybe about like maybe 50 or somewhere in that neighborhood. All right. And then once I've done that, kind of click away from it, and there we go. The other thing is I don't need the multicolors. So what I'll do is I'll click onto one of them, go back over to my fill, and I'll tell it that I want to do a solid fill. Now for the first color that I want to do here, this is going to be, we're going to do green. So I do solid fill, hit this, go with my green, just like that. Now when I click away from it, there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm going to kind of click like right there. And I can kind of move it up to about like right there. Go ahead and make this diagonally go about like that. And that gets a little bit bigger like that. Now, while I've got it selected like that, I can actually just use my up arrow key. And I can maybe use my right arrow key and kind of get it lined up maybe like that, or maybe it lined up with the bottom one here, or maybe even get it right in between. Whatever. Get it to what you think. Now, once I've done that, I want to create two more of these for each one of these here. I don't want to have to go through all that trouble. So while I've got this thing selected, all right, so while the outer frame here is selected, on your keyboard you can hit the letter Control and the letter D. So Control D, and that will duplicate that. See? Now while that thing is still selected, look at this, you guys, I'll just hit my down arrow key like that, and that way I can just very quickly get it exactly lined up the way I want it to be. And I figured I'd do something maybe like that. All right? And then I'll do another Control D, all right? And because I did that, it kind of figures the spacing that I wanted to do, and it puts it in there for me. If you don't think that's exactly right, you can move it around and do all that, but it's just fine the way it is. So now we've got that. Now for the second one, for the color here, we're going to click onto that, go to our little paint bucket here, and tell that we want that to be, let's say, blue. All right, so we'll go with this blue here, and I will click on this guy here, and this one's going to be kind of like that rust color here. So we'll click onto the little paint bucket there, click on that, go with our rust, and there we go. Okay, so now for each one of these, we're going to create an overlay graph, donut graph here, that represents the annual here, the biannual, and the perennial, okay? Totals there. So what we're going to do is you click onto the graph just like that. Now that takes us into the chart design. That tab gets activated. If it doesn't, just click it and it'll activate it. And then what we do is we go over here to the select data, and we're going to tell it that we want to put another donut along with this here. So what we do is we've already got this one here. that series is already in there. That's representing that round one there. We'll click on add, right? And then what we do is we choose for the series name annual. So we just kind of click right under there, right? All right, oop. And then we go ahead and click onto here, backspace that out. That's important that you do that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to select these two numbers here, just like that. So annual is going to be represented by that range right there. So we go ahead and hit OK on that. And there's our first one. Then we hit OK again. This kind of went off the screen, but let's go ahead and hit OK again. And there we go. So now there it is. So in essence, what you have right now is we have the blue here representing the 38, and then we have the orange here representing the 62. See? All right. So eventually we're gonna make it so where this overlays then the other graph that we have in there, and thus then you're going to see green going all the way up to, you know, being this amount here, and the orange being the lighter amount, as you remember seeing. All right, so we're going to do this for the other two here. So I'll click onto here, all right? And then again, I go back into select data, add, all right? And now in this case, for the series name, that's going to be biannual. So there we go on that one. And then we'll click over here, backspace that out, all right? And then we'll select this range right here, see? And then once we've done that, we hit OK a couple times, and we've got that. So again, you can see that blue one representing the 38, and this and the orange, whatever, is the 62. All right. So now for our last one, we'll click onto that, go back into select data, hit add, all right? Go to the series name, hit perennial, all right? And then go down here, backspace that out, and then go ahead and select these two there, just like that. Hit OK. There we have it. Hit OK again. There we go. Okay, now our next step is to put this graph on top of this one here. Okay, now to do that, we will click onto this guy right here, click it again, all right? Then what we do is, if you've got the chart design tab, you know, activated, which it should be, then what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to where it says change chart type. Now when we do that, this little window pops up, all right? Now what we want to do is, in essence, tell it that we want the annual here, okay, to have its own axis, right? Now by doing that, by clicking onto that and hitting OK, that now puts that outer one on top of the inner one. So it's all on top there, right? So let me do that for the other ones here as well. So I'll click onto here, click it again, all right, get that selected right there, all right? Doesn't matter which one you do. You do the orange one or the blue one, or just click it and then click it again, all right? And then we'll go and change the chart type, and again, on the biannual, its own axis, that makes it combine and overlay just like that, see? And we'll do the same thing with the third one. We'll click there, click it again, get that activated, go back over here to change chart, and then again, for perennial, hit OK, and there we go. Now, that in itself would be okay. I mean, we could leave it like that, and if you look at the done version here, go back over there, we could leave it where it doesn't, you know, it just has that solid look to it, but we really were looking to make it so where each of these little sections showing here are like 5%, right? So it kind of gives you kind of a neat little indication almost, right? So that's what we want to do with this one here. So how do we do it? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to click onto the first one here, and specifically click onto that blue one, all right, right there. Now, if this hasn't come up, in other words, let me just do this real quick here. If for some reason you have that closed still, all right, if you point to this and click it again, and then double click it, that panel will open up, see? So now what we want to do is go back over to the paint bucket and tell it that we want this blue one to have no fill, in other words, no color. By doing that, it then exposes that initial donut we had in the background. Thus, it kind of shows how much is that. And then, so in this case, that whole green area is representing 38%. Now, the orange one, what we're going to do here is we're going to click onto that one a couple times, get that, make sure that that's selected, all right? Now, in this one, we're going to tell it that we want to put a solid fill on that. So we're going to click on a solid fill, all right? We're going to tell it that we want it to see white, all right? So make it white, there it goes, right? Now look at this, we go to the transparency, and we bring this up to maybe, I don't know, maybe 20 or 25%. There's 20. I'll just use my little, or that's actually 24. Bring it up one more, there's 25. So that looks pretty good. If you want to go a little bit darker, you can, bring this up to maybe 30, something like that. But we'll just go with the 20, 25%. All right, now, you probably just saw this and go, wait, what did you just do? So we're going to do this a couple more times, all right? So we're going to go back now to the second one here, all right, for the biennial. So we'll click that a couple times, make sure that that's selected. This should already be open, from the last time. We go over here to the bucket, all right? Again, we say no fill. There it exposes now that blue background, right? And then over on the orange area, we click over there a couple times, get that activated. And then you'll see this being orange, so we'll just change that again to white. And then again, put this at about 25%. So we're just going to drag that over, or just use your up arrow, and that's it on that one. All right, looks pretty good. Okay, so I think you've got it now, right? So we'll go ahead and we'll click on to this one here, make sure that that blue one is activated, which is representing the 24. Again, we go back to the bucket, no fill, shows and exposes that background. Click onto this one over here, right? And you just have to click it once. That usually will get it activated, but just make sure you got that in there selected. Then go back over here, we'll change that back to white, all right? And then we'll go ahead and bring this up a little bit. Now you can also, there's other little things you can do too, is if you were to, instead of doing that as a white, maybe do it as a yellow, something like that, and then go and do this. I guess that's not going to really do too well. We'll do white. Now that I think about it. All right, enough with that. All right, so then we'll bring that back up to 25. Bring that down here a little bit. There's 25. All right, perfect. So once we've done that, click away from it. There we go. And I can actually close this up now. I don't need that anymore. Now, one little thing we can do, and I'll go back to our done version here. I also want to be able to go over and get this so where I've got the percentage. So whatever this number is here, I want to see that right in the middle there. So what we can actually do then to make that happen is we'll go over to Insert. We'll go over here to our text boxes area, whatever. We've got the text box. We can click onto that, all right? I can just kind of drag this like this. Now, this is a little trick here. What I want to do is link into this box here that number, all right? Now, how the heck are we going to do that? Well, while you're in it like this, you go back up to the formula bar. We hit equal, all right? We click onto the 38, all right, just like that. Hit enter, and voila, all right? Then what I'll do is I'll make this centered in both directions here. So now it's vertical and horizontally centered there. And then we'll go ahead and maybe make it a little bit bigger. Something like that maybe, all right? And then what I'll do too is I want to get rid of this white canvas. I want to make this clear, because if I were to take this now and drag it there, that's what I'm going to get, right? So what I need to do is I can do a right click on this, right? And then I can go down here to the very bottom where it says Format Shape. That little panel will pop up, and I can tell it that I want no fill and I want no line, all right? So I'm not going to get the frame or the fill in there. So I do that, and I can just kind of close that up, and there we go. Now, if you want to, you can also maybe resize this a little bit like that. But you don't have to. And now I can take that and drag it over here. Now it seems it might be a little bit big there, so maybe I'll go ahead and bring this down just a little bit, something like that. You can leave it black. We can also bold it, all right? Make it stand out. Then I can take that, drag it over here, and let go. Now, right after you get let go of it, the thing is still selected, so I can actually use my arrow keys and get it just right. All right. Now, while it's still selected, I want to duplicate this into the other two boxes, or the other two graphs here. So I'm going to do a Control D to duplicate, do like that, and I'll take that one and I'll move it down into here like that, and I can again get it just right. What do you think is right? Like that, maybe? I don't know. And I can do another Control D, and it usually will get it right in there if you've got everything all spaced right. But if you still think it's off a little bit, you can move it around with your arrow keys, right? Now the problem is that we duplicated that one, so we're getting the same number here and here. So if I click onto this one here, right, and I go up here at the top where it says L5, now in this case, this one needs to be, what, L11 instead. So I need to go backspace that, put 11 in there, enter it, all right. I lose the formatting, but we'll fix that in just a second. Now I'll go to this one here, go back up here, backspace that one. Now this one needs to be, what, row 20, or 17 actually, right? So it's going to be L17. So I just put a 17 in there, and then enter that in, right? Now, watch this. I click onto here one time. That's selecting the number there, right? Double click my format painter. That's the way it stays selected. I can point to this one here, click, point to this one here, click it. Then I can just hit my escape, and it gets me out of there. And there we go. And that's it. We've done it. So now, later on, if I start applying these filters here, and I say, okay, right now I'm seeing everybody in all countries, I can instead say I just want to see only, let's say, Hendrix, all right? So I want to just see Hendrix's sales, hit OK on that, there it goes. So that's Hendrix and what he did in those three areas as far as sales goes. So 37% of his sales were annuals, 39%, and so forth. But I can see that number over here. That's the key, right? If I go back in there and I click onto that and I hit all, that resets it back to showing everybody. Now, if I want to focus on a particular country, let's say I want to see Argentina, all I have to do is click onto that, hit OK, and there's Argentina. So you can see those numbers. So it's kind of interesting. So this is the kind of thing that you might go ahead, maybe put into maybe a PowerPoint type slide so they can actually see that information. But usually you're doing these kinds of dashboards, as we call it, when you're trying to do maybe a demonstration. So you might even just bring this up on the screen and then go ahead and make the changes to the filtering and see how that changes and show that to your audience and kind of go from there. So that's about it, everybody. So I appreciate you watching the video. Hopefully this can help you out. Appreciate you.